This is a download from the BBC of the World Football Phone-In, which is broadcast as part of the Up All Night programme on 5 Live from 2:30am to 4am on Saturday mornings. Here's the latest edition.
This morning it's America North and South. Sean Wheelock is in Kansas covering all your questions to do with North American football, Major League Soccer, and indeed Central American football as well. Tim Vickery is in Colombia tonight. He's our South American football expert, generally in Rio, but he's transformed to Colombia for what reason, Tim?
Well, to be closer to Sean Wheelock, obviously, but not mainly because.
Look, I'm glad we could bring you all together, but can we talk football now?
That's the power of football, isn't it? Mainly to do a piece for World Soccer Magazine on Colombian football in general, because it's a fascinating place in terms of its football, and Colombia, after Brazil, is the largest country in South America in terms of population. And the football here has enormous potential. It has lots of urban centres. Colombia has a real football-crazy population. I've been to a couple of games this week, and the racket that the fans make is astonishing. And it's also 60 years on from when they launched their professional league. They were outside FIFA at the time, which meant they didn't have to pay transfer payments. So they just sucked up all the best talent from Argentina, from Uruguay. Even players from England came over to this pirate league in 1948. Suddenly, from nowhere, Colombia was playing some of the best football in the world. So I think it's an appropriate time to be here, having a look and enjoying the country.
And from the point of view of Kansas, Sean, the big story is all about David Beckham, isn't it?
It most certainly is. You know, so many people in the off-season who normally don't talk to me about football, but they're vaguely aware of what I do for a living. They know I do something with football, and I'm on the BBC. They've said to me, wow, isn't David Beckham such a failure? And I say, remember, it's a 5-year contract. Last year, well, it could be classified harshly as a failure. Major League Soccer would like to say it wasn't a failure. It was an unfortunate set of circumstances. But David Beckham now has to live up to the potential, and the potential not necessarily on the pitch, but off the pitch, what Major League Soccer is paying him upwards of $50 million US a year to do, which is to attract all sorts of attention. You know, when I was in Hawaii 2 weeks ago on the World Football Phone-In, I did the 4 matches as part of the Pan Pacific Championship. David Beckham looked very good in those 2 friendlies in Hawaii. Los Angeles Galaxy has since gone on to Asia. David Beckham is trying to get match fit. Obviously, he wants to win his 100th cap for England. That is certainly not in doubt. Beyond that, David Beckham, I know, wants to be in England's qualification squad and maybe even play in World Cup 2010. And beyond that, he still has 4 years of this deal in Major League Soccer, and he does not want to be classified as a failure. He is a very proud man. I know a lot of our listeners in and out of the UK don't like David Beckham, but he certainly does not want to be seen as a failure or a disaster to Major League Soccer.
Andrew in London, good morning, sir.
Morning, Sean. Good morning, Tim, and good morning, Dalton.
Good morning.
Hi, Andrew.
To you.
Now, I'm going to give Tim a rest this week for a change, and I've got a question for Sean.
Go ahead.
But before I do, Dalton, our usual little private chat, if I may.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You've been neglecting the only team which
you told me.
getting a yellow card.
Hang on a second. You told me not to go anywhere near the Valley for any crucial matches because whenever I go and watch that team with you, we always lose or we let in a goal at the last minute. And what happened on Tuesday night? Eh?
Yeah, well, you see, exactly. It was a good game actually, but Charlton didn't deserve to win. No.
And for those who don't know why this is a World Football Phone-In topic, well, Charlton are in South East London. It's a foreign country to me.
Exactly. Just very quickly before I ask Sean a question, you might remember last week I told you my other passion was Italian opera, and can you remember a chap by the name of Alfredo Di Stefano, or who used to play for Real Madrid?
Of course.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, his very famous namesake, who used to sing at the same time, was also called Di Stefano, Giuseppe. Very famous tenor, was as famous as Pavarotti. Well, he died earlier this week, so that's sad. Nothing to do with World Soccer, though, however.
No, absolutely. There was a connection. There was a South American connection. Yeah, that's all good.
Same name. Now, Sean, good morning again.
Good morning.
Many times in the last year or two, you've mentioned Freddie Adu, the famous Freddie Adu, who never seemed to become as good as he was made out, who also seemed to be 14 for about 3 years running.
Exactly.
And then 17, so he's about mid-20s now, I reckon. Anyhow, he's gone to Benfica. I've just read an article about another great possible star, who's been banging the goals in for the New York Red Bulls, called Jozy Altidore.
That's right.
I've never heard of him, but apparently he's been really scoring goals, especially for the USA under-17s, considered a better prospect than Freddie Adu, who, by the way, whenever I saw him playing, I thought he was good. And apparently Chelsea and Manchester United are after Altidore. So tell us about him, please.
Jozy Altidore is a wonderful footballer. Kind of the running joke on this program when we've talked about him in the past, as I say, he's having Freddie Adu's career. Jozy Altidore came to Major League Soccer with absolutely none of the hype and the hoopla that accompanied Freddie Adu. He signed a professional contract at 16 years old. He's born in the United States of Haitian immigrants. He is very, very big. I stand about 6'2", and when I first met him, I thought, where's this 17-year-old Jozy Altidore supposed to be? Oh, it's that huge guy standing next to me. He's about 6'3". He has the type of body, when you look at him, you think this is someone who could play and bang in goals in the Premiership. He is incredibly mature. He is always smiling, and yet he has the confidence, not the immaturity, of a professional footballer. He's only played 2 years now as a professional, and as you said correctly, Andrew, both years with New York Red Bulls. He is going to feature with the United States and feature prominently in World Cup, I beg your pardon, in Olympic qualification, which begins for the United States on March 11th. That, of course, is the under-23s, or in Europe and in the UK, it's the under-21s. Technically, you're allowed 3 overage exemptions. He is most certainly going to feature well. The United States has a good chance of being one of the 2 CONCACAF nations that qualifies for this summer's Olympic Games. I'm not sure if it will even take that long. Altidore will most certainly be gone from Major League Soccer, most likely to the Premiership after the Olympics and probably before. This is someone who is a star on the rise. I'm not saying he's someone who's going to come in and be Wayne Rooney immediately, but he could settle in for, I think, outside of maybe the top 5 or 6 Premiership sides, come in, probably play first-team football and score 6, 8, 10, 12 goals, and he's only going to get better. I have nothing but positive things to say about Jozy Altidore, and he is strong, he is big, he is athletic. He's the type of goal scorer that the United States has been waiting 100 years to create.
Andrew, thanks so very much for the call. Sean, you're never 6'2". You're the same height as me, mate. Is an American foot different from an English foot, then?
I think we're the same height. At the Super Bowl we've been together.
We're the same height.
And how tall are you, Don?
I'm only 6 foot. Where'd you get those 2 extra inches from? Those Cuban heels, eh? Tony in Doncaster.
Jozy Altidore is taller than both of us.
Okay, Tony in Doncaster. Good morning, sir.
Hello, morning, Johnson.
Hiya.
Just a couple of questions for Tim, if that's okay, Doctor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to ask Tim about Lionel Messi. I'm wondering, in Argentina, are they actually worried about him getting injured so much? Because I was watching the Celtic match this week, and he limped off a game, and a stat came up saying that he's been injured now 7 times in the last 2 years, which have actually kept him out for a couple of weeks. I'm wondering, because maybe it's linked to all the growth hormone, the stuff what they was giving him, and are they actually worried there? Because he just seems to be, getting injured all the time. It's
a huge debate in Argentina, Tony, because obviously Messi is many people in Argentina see him as the Messiah. When Argentina play, you get big banners saying Messi is the Messiah. He's the man who's going to lead them back to the promised land. So it's a huge debate in Argentina, and pages of newsprint are taken up with doctors and physical preparation specialists offering their explanation for why this is happening. No one in Argentina wants to believe this line which is coming out, that his muscular problems are in some way connected to this hormone growth treatment. And that's the reason that he went to Spain in the first place. He went to Barcelona, and he was in the youth ranks of the club he supports, Newell's Old Boys in the city of Rosario. They just couldn't afford that kind of treatment. So Barcelona wangled him, got him over there, and financed this treatment. No one in Argentina wants to believe that this is at the root of the problem, because if so, then it could be a long-term problem. And people just want to believe that it's bad luck, or perhaps that he's being asked to do too much too early. He's been asked to play too many games by Barcelona. So yes, Tony, people are very, very worried about it, and it's a subject that they're going to be debating for a long time to come.
Sure. Two quick questions, Dalton, if that's all right.
Yeah, go.
Quickly, Kun Aguero. I think he's a brilliant player, and Argentina are so lucky to have him and Messi. Is he going out with Maradona's daughter? Is that true? And also another one about Adriano, the Brazilian nutter, as I like to call him. Is he apparently he's been going around Brazil telling people to call him the Emperor? Is that is that true?
Well, that's what he's called in Italy.
Yeah.
Adriano, because there was a Hadrian. It's Roman Emperor. That's how his name translates.
Yeah.
So he's known as the Emperor in Italian football. He's come back to Brazil, and he's getting this Emperor thing thrown at him all the time. And his line is, well, I never chose this nickname for myself. Yeah. It was given to me because of the things that I achieved on the football field, and I want to go back and achieve those things again and prove myself worthy of the nickname. He did very well midweek in a vital game for São Paulo in the Libertadores. They were losing at home 1-0 to a side from Chile. Adriano pops up and scores 2 goals in the last 15 minutes, and they win by 2-1. Sergio Aguero, the Argentinian striker at Atletico Madrid, it is indeed true. He is Diego Maradona's son-in-law. He's dating Maradona's daughter, so he's hoping, I think, for some of the magic to run off, to rub off on him. And you are indeed correct. I think for Argentina to have Messi and Aguero together, and providing they can both stay fit, it really does bode very well for them in the long term, especially as they're fantastic friends. They get on very, very well, Aguero and Messi, and that could be bad news for Manchester United's Carlos Tevez. And he's under pressure a little bit for his international place. He's suspended for the next game in World Cup qualification, and he could well find himself forced out by this combination of Messi and Aguero.
Let's continue very quickly. Sean, sorry. I've got a text message here from Gary in Nottingham. I'll be going to see Ghana versus Mexico at Craven Cottage on the 26th of March. I watched all of Ghana's matches during the African Cup of Nations, but I know nothing about Mexico. What can you tell us about the Mexican national side, and what's your prediction for this match?
I think Mexico is like a very, very heavy stout. You either love it or you hate it, but either way you probably appreciate it. Tim Vickery coined it, and Tim, I always cite you as the source of this, but I love this term, and it's tap, tap, tap football, and that is Mexico. Mexico plays those very short passes, not with the flair of Brazil, but those very short passes through the midfield. What many people, including myself, find infuriating with Mexican football is that they would rather try individually for one footballer in the attacking third to beat 6 men rather than make the simple pass. And Tim in Colombia, I know that you're nodding knowingly on that comment. Mexico has loads of talent. They've been in every World Cup since 1994, and yet they somehow underachieve. They're not as good as they should be or they could be. And in this decade, the United States has absolutely dominated Mexico to their consternation, because one thing Mexico always had, they knew that they weren't as good as Brazil, they weren't as good as Argentina, but in the CONCACAF Confederation, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, they were the superior side, better than their arch rivals, the United States. And that's simply no longer the case. And I'm not even sure that Mexico doesn't have the individual talent. If you look through an 18 or a 22 or a 23-man squad, in many ways they're superior individually to the United States. But the style of football that the United States plays, both against Mexico and against international opponents, lends to better results for America. With that being said, Mexico still can be a lot of fun to watch because of these individual footballers. If you talk about who are their star men, I think you start with Rafael Marquez, the Barcelona defender, who is absolutely brilliant, was one of the first of this generation of Mexican footballers to leave Mexico, and we'll get into that reason in a moment why they don't leave. He went to AS Monaco and then has just been brilliant at Barcelona. Pavel Pardo is a very good, hardworking midfielder. He plays for VfB Stuttgart. Nery Castillo is, of course, now on loan at Manchester City and starting to make his way. Yard Borghetti, who's still trying to factor in, he announced his return retirement after World Cup 2006 from international football, but now says that he wants to be in contention for the 2010 squad. You may just see him in this match. Borghetti, despite the fact that he was quite a spectacular failure at Bolton, has done some brilliant things both for club and country. At the international level, Mexico's all-time leading goal scorer, even above the great Hugo Sanchez, their manager, which is quite an accomplishment. Two young players, and I know, Tim, you like them a lot, Giovanni Dos Santos, who's at Barcelona, and Carlos Vela, who's at Osasuna in Spain. It's a fun side to watch, but you'll see what I mean about the tap, tap, tap football, and sometimes they're a bit too individualistic, but also Mexico can do some absolutely brilliant things, and they can really be exciting. Now, the reason why Mexico has not been an export league, and this is another reason why they've probably not been as good as they should be on the world stage, is because the Mexican top flight pays more money than Argentina's top flight, than Brazil's top flight, than America's top flight in Major League Soccer. The money is absolutely massive. And outside of the rare occasions like Hugo Sanchez playing Spanish football in the late 1980s and early 1990s, or Rafael Marquez going to France and then Spain, or now you see Castillo, who's got a lot of nationalities, although he was born in Mexico, has an Italian mother and Uruguayan father, could have represented Greece at the international level, but you're starting to see footballers exported, and that's to, I think, the betterment of Mexico, because it's so easy for them to play 15, 18, 20 years at home, become multimillionaires, but maybe not quite be as good as they could be because they don't challenge themselves. It's really an intriguing match, though, I think, stylistically, when you talk about those two nations, and then the fact of where the ground is it's going to be a fun match.
Dara in Ballin, Ireland, good morning.
Hello, how are you doing, Dalton? Again, it's good to be back on the World Football Phone.
Yeah, good to speak to you, mate. You got a question for Sean?
I do. I have a question for Sean. How are you doing, Sean? Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
It's just basically, I know nothing about American football. Sorry to tell you that, but apart from the odd player that plays in the Premiership and the few teams that you've mentioned, just can you tell me about the structure, about young players coming through, and is there a first division? You know, I know about the MLS and stuff like that, but can you just give me a brief synopsis about the structure of American football?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great question. As much as we talk about Major League Soccer, I don't think we really talk that much about the structure on this program, and it's confusing to a lot of people. Major League Soccer is the top flight. It's the highest level of football. It's also classified as the highest level of football in Canada. They just have one site. Canada doesn't have their own domestic league, so Major League Soccer is unique in that it does actually, even though it's based in America, it is the Canadian top flight. They have Toronto FC. It's rumored the next 3 or 4 years Montreal and or Vancouver could come in. Below that is something called the United Soccer Leagues. Now, United Soccer Leagues is an independent company from Major League Soccer. That's why we don't have promotion relegation. There's no working relationship between the two. United Soccer Leagues then operates the American/Canadian second, third, and fourth division, which even more confusingly is called USL1. So the American-Canadian second division is called USL1. It's a lot like with the Premiership, the Championship, League One, League Two. We've imported that confusion over here. That's fully professional at that level. A footballer in that level would be making anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000 US for the campaign. So you're talking 15,000 to 40,000 pounds. There are some very good footballers at that level. There are some footballers who are just not quite good enough to play in Major League Soccer, or maybe are on their way to Major League Soccer. Brian Ching, for instance, the U.S. international, started his career at Los Angeles Galaxy, was released, played in USL 1, then made it back, and now is one of the most consistent goal scorers for the United States in an MLS. Below that, the American third division, confusingly enough, called USL 2, is classified as semi-professional. Some of the clubs don't actually pay their footballers, others do. Some could make as little as $50 or about 25 quid per match. Some don't actually get paid, but they might be on a situation where they help out with putting on youth camps and clinics in a structure like that. It's really the equivalent of conference or maybe even low conference football, the American third division. Below that, you have what's called the PDL, which is the Premier Development League, and that's the American Fourth Division. That's a league really set up as an under-23 league. The idea of that is that's for footballers who are playing at the college and university level, who are ages 17 through 22 or 23, who in the summer months when they're staying at home or away from their university or college can play in a professional atmosphere. But because of college university rules in America, once you accept money, you lose your ability to play at that that level. So it's a professional structure without actually receiving any sort of wages whatsoever. They'll get a travel stipend and they'll get money for meals. But that's a real great development. The Major League Soccer does not, again, have any sort of promotion relegation, nor is there promotion relegation with the second, third, and fourth divisions. And that's to the consternation of a lot of football supporters in the United States. It's something people would very much like to see. But the reality of it is that culturally that seems very foreign. Unless you're a football supporter in this country, which there are millions like me who are, people just don't understand that. For instance, there's no second tier in American football. In the National Football League, if you finish bottom of the table like Miami Dolphins, you don't find yourself being relegated. So that's something that probably is not going to happen in this country. Where Major League Soccer has really been remiss, and they've only started to now address this problem since the league began in 1996, it's taken them a long time. There's no youth development structure, and so the youth scheme really comes under the responsibility of the college and university system. The overwhelming majority of footballers who come into Major League Soccer come in their early 20s out of the college and university system. Now, Dalton, a month or so ago on the program, I had my report on Andy Iro, who's from Liverpool, but then went to university in California, Santa Barbara, and is now with Columbus Crew. Andy Iro was able to go through essentially this youth structure through the college and university system, but there's not the opportunity like just virtually every other footballing nation in the world where you are an apprentice at 14, you sign your pro forms at 16 or 17, and you work your way into first-team football. There are exceptions of youngsters like Freddie Adu, like Josie Altidore, like Eddie Gavin, who can come up through an early age, but again, the overwhelming majority come into the league when they're in their early 20s after that college/university system. And as I was talking earlier about Mexico, maybe what's hurt Mexico internationally is that they're not much of an export league. I think overall what's hurt the United States internationally, although this is starting to be addressed, is because we don't have that youth scheme. So someone is a first-year professional at 22 years old. Well, compare that to where Wayne Rooney is or where Michael Owen was at 22, and you see why maybe that's a slow development. But overall, it is vastly improved. America went from 1985 until 1996 without top-flight football. The North American Soccer League folded after the 1984 campaign. And to think where we were not that long ago to where we are now, I think it's great progress for America. Thanks very much for the question.
Dara, thanks very much. Tim, Ali wants to know, he says that Brazil has got some excellent right-backs, Rafinha, Maricon, Alves. Although the Interman seems to be the regular now, who do you think is the best out of them?
Yeah, suddenly they're spoilt for choice, and it is strange. A few years ago, they had more left backs than you could shake a stick at, and not a lot of alternative to Cafu at right back. Now it's the other way around, and right back. Maicon, Rafinha, a terrific player with Schalke, Daniel Alves, Cicinho. So they've got lots and lots of right backs. Maicon is just a staggering physical, and he hurtles forward with real power. I don't think he's the most intelligent player. I know he had problems when he was at Monaco, trying to play the offside line. That really wasn't his game at all. You want him higher up the field, charging forward. So, and perhaps the most complete of them, for my money, might be Daniel Alves. But I think Rafinha is very impressive as well. And just to come off the back of what Sean was saying about youth development in the States, there's something that happens here where I am at the moment in Colombia, and also happens in Ecuador that I think people might be interested in. In the domestic football here, the clubs are obliged to play one player who's eligible for next year's under-20 championships. So that they're obliged to field someone who is effectively at the moment an under-19 player. He has to be part of the starting lineup. Now, quite often you see these young players being substituted after 15 or 20 minutes, but it does mean that young players are getting some game time out there. It might seem a little bit artificial and contrived, and certainly lots of those who've had this opportunity haven't really taken advantage of it over the last few years. Many of these people who've been the designated under-19 player haven't really managed to establish themselves in the game. It doesn't apply for international competitions, so it's only for domestic competitions. But I just wonder what people in Britain or Europe generally might think of the idea of, for domestic competitions, the clubs being obliged to field an under-19 player.
I'm not sure. And just on that question of under 19s, under 21s, under 23s, Alan in Glasgow wants to know, Sean, why Americans are allowed under 23s and we're only allowed under 21s. Surely that's an unfair advantage.
It most certainly is, and it's simply because of UEFA. UEFA, because they don't put a really great emphasis like we do in the United States, in the CONCACAF region, and most South American nations. Europe, including the UK, does not put an emphasis on Olympic football. In fact, in the UK, and I think a lot of listeners are aware of this without really thinking this through, the reason why you never see England in the Olympics is because there is no English Olympic Committee, and you would have to have a Great British side. The Great British Olympic Committee would have to field a football squad, and that's going to get into a row with FIFA, which is why you don't see England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, or Wales in the Olympic Games. It would not work. UEFA decided, not FIFA, not anyone else, that they want to cut it off at a U21 level, whereas FIFA and the International Olympic Committee have said we will allow the Olympic participant sides to be under 23s. It's an odd situation. I don't know why UEFA has done that, and I've always been puzzled by this. Why don't they allow their best possible players? And probably the obvious answer is because there's not that importance placed on the Olympic Games in Europe and in the UK. The best footballers aged 22 and 23 are either well established with their clubs or they're playing at the senior international level, and they just simply can't be bothered, or they are apathetic. They have no interest to try to qualify for an Olympic position. Tim, if you'll talk about this after I finish, but I know there's huge importance in Argentina and even more so in Brazil on the Olympic Games, but I really find that baffling. Certainly in South America, right, Tim? They're going with the under 23s.
Title that Brazil have never won, so they're absolutely desperate to kind of fill the trophy cabinet and get that one. Argentina are the reigning Olympic champions, but we did have an interesting thing this time. Usually there's an under-23 championships at the start of the Olympic year, which serves as qualification for the Olympic Games. The South American Federation scrapped it because they said there's no money they would lose money organising this under-23 tournament. So they used as qualifiers last year's under-20 championships. So it's the under-20s that qualified for both Brazil and Argentina, but both of them will go with under-23 sides.
Ian in Exeter is hoping to catch you out, Tim, with this question. Do you know who the first English team to play in Brazil was?
Well, the first English team to play the Brazilian national side
in Brazil was
Exeter City. People who came over, the Corinthians came over and inspired the big Brazilian club with millions and millions of supporters of the same name. Everton came over, but the very, very first one. Ian, please tell us.
Exeter was the clue. Ian in Exeter.
I'm not sure they were the first one to play club football, but the game between Exeter and the Brazilian national side was the first game ever played by the Brazilian national side.
Jim in Newport, you've got another quiz for Sean.
Sean, which American boxer signed for an English Football League club?
Is he a current boxer?
No.
A former boxer?
Yes.
And it's not Muhammad Ali?
It's not Muhammad Ali, no.
I love trivia. I adore trivia, and I don't know this. Can I have a hint, please?
Well, it was in the year I was born, 1944. Joe Louis was over there, and he signed for Liverpool as a publicity stunt.
What's really amazing on that is 2 weeks ago when I was sitting in my hotel room in Hawaii waiting to do the Pan Pacific Championships, I watched the documentary on American television on Joe Louis, a 1-hour documentary. There was no mention of that. Don't you think that they would have mentioned that? It shows you how little some people in my country pay attention to football. That is a wonderful question. That is a really wonderful question.
Football Monday, hello.
Hello, go on.
Yeah, I think I might have seen a program, and I might have seen the same one as you did. And I think it did say on there, you missed something, don't you? But I was at an England game with the West Saxon. I was born at Wembley, and it was in a quiz in the Free Lions puzzle page. It was the first question I had the shock of my life.
Did Joe Lewis know what football was? The football
Joe
we play.
Lewis, the world heavyweight champion.
But did he know? Did he know what he was signing up to?
I think it was a publicity stunt.
But
he was over here, I believe.
Nevertheless, he'd have had to take a penalty like Diana Ross did in the Super Bowl.
Has that ball reached the goal yet? Diana Ross.
It's still rolling.
It's still rolling, yeah.
That was the blight of World Cup '94, by the way. Diana Ross was just cringeworthy.
There you go.
I remember.
What a wonderful question. Thank you very much for that. I love trivia.
Jim, thanks a lot for the call. 0500 909 693 is our number if you'd like to join us for the World Football Phone-In, talking North American and South American football. Let's get an update in the cricket, though, from Hamilton. Alison Mitchell.
Another boundary takes New Zealand on to 109 for 2. The lead now 231. And Dermot Reeve, England very much on the defensive now.
Yeah, Michael Vaughan's trying to protect the boundary. He's got 4 men back on the boundary for side Beltram. What he's saying is he's actually happy to go for 3 or 4 and over, and he just doesn't want to go for boundaries. But Fleming is playing with cavalier fashion, and he's just hit another boundary over extra cover.
He moves on to 66. Sinclair yet to get off the mark. We've all been buoyed by that fantastic catch by Matthew Hoggard, but England still have a long, long way to go here, and the New Zealand lead now 231.
Alison and Dermot, thanks very much. Tim from Kess in Blackburn. Arsenal bought the Brazilian Pedro Roberto Silva Botelho, but they've bought a young Argentinian player called Di Maria as well.
No, that they wanted to, but he upped sticks and went to Portugal. Di Maria is with Benfica. And when he went to Benfica, when he was presented on the day of his presentation at Benfica, he said, what I really want to do is do well here and then go to Chelsea. The other player mentioned there, Pedro, a fullback, I believe they signed from Figueirense, very, very young, with very little football behind him. I think they've loaned him out to Salamanca. He's another one of these who's almost been snatched out of the cradle of South American football before he's done anything of note in the domestic game. And I think the track record with these deals is that they tend to go wrong more than they go right.
Tim, from Benny in Oxford, are Rivellino and Jorginho still around and still in football?
Rivellino and Jorginho, they do a lot of dining out on their 1970 fame, to be honest. Rivellino has a football school, but he says himself he's not teaching anyone to play the game. It's more of a social alternative that he's offering, and he sits there in his string vest and looks every inch what he is really, which is an Italian, kind of second-generation Italian immigrant with his big moustache and so on. He's never really wanted too much contact. But he's done a little bit of media punditry, but he's one of those old school who thinks nothing's as good as it was in my day. He did have a position with his ex-club Corinthians as a kind of general manager, but he didn't last very long. Jorginho also has a kind of school and social activities, but Jorginho's been more active, and as a coach, he's had some coaching jobs. He was coaching, I think, Gabon in Africa, their national team, and also dabbled, put his finger in the water with agents' work, and he was one of the people who was first involved in the rise of Ronaldo. And Jorginho didn't quite get the money out of that he thought he was justified, and that made him a little bit bitter. But they're both big figures in Brazil, and will be so for as long as they're on the planet because of what they did with that 1970 team.
And Sean, for the benefit of ZK in Singapore, can you give us an update on the Singaporean striker on trial with Real Salt Lake? There's been very little in the press here recently. Also, in January, you did a World Service report on the Super Draft. How's the kid you followed turned out?
You
were talking about him a moment ago, Andy Iro, weren't you?
Andy Iro is doing very well. He is going to make the side. That's something on the Major League Soccer Super Draft. Just because you're selected, it guarantees you nothing. But Andy Iro, I think, has a good chance to be in the first 11 when the Major League Soccer campaign begins on March 29th. His side actually was able to let go on a transfer, Marcos Gonzalez, the Chilean defender, because they have such faith in Andy Iro. They play in a 4-4-2 system, which is a good opportunity for Andy to step in. It's someone I had just a great time spending that weekend with. Hopefully the joy of my experience came through in that report that aired on Up All Night and also aired on World Service. Andy Iro is going to come in. I think he's going to do some good things. Certainly there's a step up going from university level to Major League Soccer. Major League Soccer, no, it's not as skillful as a league like the Premiership or Spain's La Liga. You have to be very fit. very athletic and run a lot. Andy Iro is going to do quite well. Now, in terms of the Singapore footballer, I've been asking people on this, and I'm having a tough time finding any information on this at all. When we had this question 2 weeks ago, I was in Hawaii, and I immediately started asking around. So I'm a bit baffled on this footballer, but there's certainly not been much in terms of the Major League Soccer press machine coming out talking about this type of footballer coming in. It's incredibly intriguing right now, but even on the website of Real Salt Lake, there is nothing about this footballer. It's something I need to dig deeper on.
You know about, first of all, this is a difficult, I'll read that one out later because I think it's a bit complicated, the text message I was about to read out. Just for you, Tim, if I may, this has been, what do you think, is Roque Santa Cruz, is that your region really?
Yeah, very much so.
Paraguay, of course.
Yeah.
What do you think of Roque Santa Cruz with Blackburn, and how do you think he's done in his first season in the Premiership, and what's his reputation like in Paraguay?
Oh, he's a terrific centre forward, a wonderful, wonderful player. Beanpole build, pace over the ground, terrific in the air, can finish off either foot. The problem that he's had in his career is injuries, is staying fit. And thankfully, he's been much fitter this season with Blackburn than he was in almost any of the years that he spent with Bayern Munich. And Bayern Munich bought him in '99 as a 17-year-old who was going to be one of the real elites of global superstars, and hasn't quite lived up to those expectations, but is still a terrific centre forward, and his exploits are followed devotedly in Paraguay because he's the greatest forward that they've produced, perhaps ever.
You've been listening to a download of the World Football Phone-In from Up All Night at BBC Radio 5 Live. You can put your questions live on Saturday mornings from 2:30am to 4am, or you can email us at upallnight, that's all one word, at bbc.co.uk. That's upallnight at bbc.co.uk.